Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this week is a new episode of Spoiler Talks. And I don't do many of these, but I felt this was very fitting as my pal Robert, editor at SiftPop and fellow film enthusiast and television, specifically told me at the beginning of this season of Succession, we have to do a spoiler talk about this. And by the end, he was 100% right. So, Robert, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me as always. I love the intro to this where you talk about whatever the hell you want. It always makes me chuckle.
Well, it's honestly true because it gives me excuse. There's so much flexibility with this
Hmm.
talk show because, like, I can try all kinds of things. And it's been fun because I've been trying out some new things. Like, one of my most recent episodes that I released is What If, which is a
Hmm.
what if scenario where it's like, what if this director did this film or this actor starred in this movie? What if John Carpenter made Resident Evil? We would have gotten a much better Resident Evil.
Probably.
So that's what I talked about with my brother. I had a
Nice.
new one talking about how, it's like song maketh the scene and talking
Hmm.
about like how a song really made this particular scene in a film or TV show. And of course, had to start with Reservoir Dogs and Stuck in the Middle with You.
I was gonna say that's exactly the first one that came to mind when you said that.
Yeah, and it's just like I actually knew that song before I ever watched Reservoir
Hmm.
Dogs, but now I can't think of
Right.
anything else when that song comes on. And also the incredible Bob's Burgers reference that they make in that one episode where instead of cutting off the ear, it's a wet willy. It just like it just jumps on the guy and starts shoving his finger in his ear. I'm just like, wow.
Nice
It's
little
like my
reference.
second favorite movie reference in Bob's Burgers behind The Shining, which was one of like the first season ones when Bob got stuck in the bathroom.
Oh,
But anyway, we're here to talk about one of the most influential shows of the past 5 years, which made all of humanity fall in love with watching a bunch of scumbags, and that is Succession. And interesting enough, it's an interesting time for television when this, Mrs. Maisel, Barry, Ted Lasso, kind of all ended. That one remained to be seen.
right.
It probably should end, especially the way they ended it. But
I gave
Robert,
up on
what are your general thoughts on this last season of Succession?
it. It's funny because I want to like start balanced, but I really can't. I absolutely loved the final season. I wrote down here in my notes that I don't want to make crazy overarching statements, but it's potentially my favorite final season of
Mhm.
a show. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Um, like there
Game
are
of Thrones.
some, sure, Game of Thrones and Succession is too. Um, there are some show or some moments in the season where I'm thinking like, all right, they're going back and forth too much. There's still too much deal making. But that's really my only nitpick, and it really is just like a tiny nitpick because apart from that, it's from beginning to end. It's There's a difference between best and favorite. I think season two is still my favorite, but I think season four is the best of the show.
It's interesting because I remember when they announced that this was going to be the last season, I had a thought, I'm like, you know what? They probably should.
Yeah.
Because, like, the show overall is a lot of spinning deals that don't happen, and everybody just grubbing for any kind of power they possibly can. I'm like, how much longer can you possibly go with this?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
they made the decision that this was going to end, and boy, did they end it. And just looking at IMDb, so there's 10 episodes in this season,
Hmm.
and every single episode has at least an 8.7. And there is a 9.9 for Connor's wedding, which we'll get to because I
Right.
feel like that's the episode that shocked the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
And then the last three episodes are a 9.5, a 9.5, and a 9.6. So if you're talking about just general ratings for television, like outside of Breaking Bad, I don't think many shows have this consistency in
Right.
that greatness. And legitimately, there's some of the best episodes of television, period, in this last season. And well, let's pull the band-aid off. So Connor's wedding. Oh, it's a
Yeah.
wedding. It's gonna be lovely. And then Logan dies. And the whole entire episode is watching these three grown children try to process a world without their dad, who's been in complete control of their lives, their whole entire lives. So, Robert, how was your reaction sitting and watching that episode and realizing, like, oh, wow, they're actually doing this?
Right. Well, going into it, I'm just like, it's Connor's wedding. I am so excited for this because
Right?
Connor's like my favorite. Like, I'm a conhead, like he's
Yeah.
my favorite non-main character. So I was just excited for a wedding episode because those are always fun, or like a party episode on Succession,
It's gonna be
just to see
so
what
awkward.
exactly. I wanted to see what shenanigans would be pulled. Um, but yeah, when Tom calls Roman and he's like, "Your dad, he's very, very sick." I was just like, "Wait, what?" And I was like Roman the entire time. I was in denial that it was actually happening because they set up from the very first scene of the very first episode that Logan is sick, and they
Yeah.
come back here and there. Like the shareholder meeting in season 3 when they had to get the invisible cat out from under his chair, like because he goes piss mad. Like there are those moments, but it was just like this could happen at any time, but it's not on my mind that's going to happen right now. And you're slowly, but like drastically moved into a completely different mindset than you were at the beginning of the episode. It's expert, it's perfectly done.
And it's so unexpected because nobody would have bet money that they would have killed him off with 7 episodes
Yeah.
left of the show. And it's well, and if you think about now, I'm going to do some math. So, this show's only like 39 episodes total.
Hmm.
About a fourth of this show is after he dies. If you think about it, it's
Yeah.
not quite a fourth, but it's at least a fifth. And that's
Right.
insane
Yeah.
because Logan, and this is a pitch perfect example of why his kids are so messed up, is so integral to everything that everybody does in the show because he made a whole entire world that can't live without him. And it really shows because all of them are a complete wreck that
Right.
episode. And the acting is off the charts in this episode, and how each of them act very distinctly different. And
Yep.
then the best part was when Connor's just like, I'm gonna get married anyway.
Yeah. At
Good
an
for you,
empty,
Al.
almost completely empty,
Yeah. It's like I'm so happy for Alan Ruck, who's just like, maybe for now on he'll be known as Connor Roy
instead
instead
of
of
Cameron.
Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He didn't peak when he was actually apparently he was 29 when he
I know.
did Ferris Bueller, so at least he didn't peak before he was 30.
And he
Uh
wasn't much younger than Brian Cox either, which is really funny that like I think Brian Cox is only like 10 years older than him or something like that.
something crazy like that. Which also Brian Cox had a lot to has a lot to
Oh
say
my
about a
goodness.
lot of things. And he's a whole level energy that I don't think most people are prepared for. Everybody spends so much time talking about Jeremy
Jeremy
Strong
Strong.
and Brian Cox is over here just being an asshole.
I know.
But like Connor's wedding, and then they built up what it was 6 episodes later, we finally got the funeral.
Hmm.
And boy, was that an episode.
Well, is that one's the penultimate, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's crazy to me how they go from the election to the funeral to the finale. Like
bam,
those
bam, bam.
exactly. It's going to be some of the most seminal episodes of television of all time. You're going to look back in 50 years, if the equivalent of the Roys haven't actually destroyed the Earth in that time. Uh, but like America decides after I was feeling bad for these people in episode 3 in Connor's wedding. The way that Kieran Culkin is Roman, and I wanted to bring this up, that he's so vulnerable and so broken when his dad dies, and then he becomes so despicably evil in the election episode, and then he goes back to just a puddle. When he says, "Is he in there? Can we get him out?"
He takes his ball and goes home.
Yeah, it's just I hadn't seen Kieran Culkin in much besides Home Alone and Scott Pilgrim
Yep,
before
that's about it.
Succession, and he's one of the best performances on the show.
I feel like his career is probably gonna blow up the most because of this show. Because like I'm trying to think because like not a lot of these actors have been like obviously Brian Cox was by
Sure.
far the biggest name actor in this
Yeah.
show. Well, and then you get Alexander Skarsgård who shows up and becomes
Just
such a
becomes a
huge
series
part of the
regular.
show.
Yeah.
Um and I know Jeremy Straw like he's in The Gentleman, which I really enjoy. And I watched The Happening for the first time
Mm.
and did not realize he's in that. At one point, I'm like, "Oh my god, look,
Cheese and
it's Jeremy
crackers.
Strong," and uh, didn't get a whole lot to work with, and was in a whole movie full of horrible performances. But and like Matthew McFadden, like I watched, was it Pride and Prejudice that I
Yeah.
watched for the first time a couple of months ago, and I'm like, "Oh look, it's Tom." But there's only like big name people who come in like some supporting roles and stuff like
Right.
James Cromwell as Brian Cox's brother is just great every time he pops up back and then it's like you're all evil. You all should be destroyed.
Meanwhile, he has a however big ranch in Canada.
There you go. But this show, just watching each of these characters like I think it might be interesting to take some of these characters character by character. So like
Sure.
obviously you have Logan who passes away in like the third episode. So like that's kind of like put to rest, except he's just this ominous monolith looming over everybody. But you have this whole entire like God, I hate Kendall frustrates me so
Oh, really?
much.
Why?
Uh one, how he talks to people, and he's like, bro, dude. And I'm just like, he's your actual brother. Like, you don't have to go around calling like, come on, bro. You gotta have my back. I'm just like, stop trying to talk like you're in Gen Z or something. Or like he's trying to act cool and he's so uncomfortably awkward, and it makes it hard for me to sit and actually watch him interact with human beings. And I just I can't.
I
Uh,
think it's season one when his dad is in the hospital and he gets to sit down and like be the head of the board or whatever for
yeah.
for a brief time, and he goes sits down. He's like, I just wanted to get everyone together to sit down and say, "Yo." It's just like that exact cringy, awkward way that you're talking about. But Kendall's
But
always been he's
I'm
always been
just
my
gonna
favorite. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just gonna throw in. I will always love him though for I'm the eldest boy.
Mm.
That'll never get old. Never.
It breaks
Never.
down everything else that he was, right? Like he's trying to pretend that he's something other than that, but that's all that he is just a little kid trying to best his siblings.
Yep.
And there were a couple different ways that the show could have ended that I thought would have made sense. So if he had come out on top and just had like the hollow crown where
Mhm.
he alienated the rest of his siblings and his wife and his kids and everyone else, that would have made sense to me. And the way that it did end is the other one that made perfect sense. Um,
Which is the
so
same thing, except he doesn't have it.
true, exactly, right. Um, because it just takes the extra step to say that he was incompetent the whole time and he didn't deserve any of what he thought he did. I've always rooted for him because up until the final season, it really seemed like he always wanted to do the right thing. Honestly, up until the election episode, when he
Mhm.
realized that the Mencken supporters were being racist towards his daughter, and it hit home towards him or to him. Um, it always seemed like out of all the siblings and even like Tom and Greg, he wanted to do the right thing more than anyone else, but he just knew that he was kind of messed up and probably couldn't. Um, so the way that it just, tears down any of those facades, any of what he thought he was or what he was trying to be, and just said, here's who you are at your core. And the way that Jeremy Strong plays it with, again, like you said, the eldest boy speech, and then the final shots where he's just looking out over
Which
the
apparently
bay.
tried to make a break for it and jump into the
I
river
know.
out of the script. It's just like
A completely broken person.
you're completely changing the show.
True.
Jesse Armstrong's just being like, "What are you doing?"
Though I wouldn't be surprised if Kendall goes ahead and does that soon
Anyway,
after anyway. Yeah.
which from what I understand, it sounds like the idea is he he gets his own company and everything, but he never becomes his father,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to eat at him the whole rest of his life. And it's just like that. I think that's all he wanted. He wanted to be daddy,
Yeah.
and he'll never be able to do that. And just the end of what episode was that? Shifting gears into Shiv
Sure.
and Tom. What episode was that?
Oh,
Was it the tailgate party?
I think
Oh
so. Yeah.
my God. When they just pulled out knives and started chucking them at each other figuratively. And just were like tearing each other apart. And every single thing that either one of them said was 100% true. And you just take a step back and realize, wow, you shouldn't be together. You both are terrible. Like on some level, I feel bad for Tom a
Yeah.
lot of this show
Yeah.
because basically, and this might not be the best way to put this, like he's everybody's bitch. Like
Sure. Right.
it's like
But
he
like kind of
shits.
intentionally too.
Yeah, well that he's a cuck, 100% to his wife, who just treats him like garbage for most of the show, which is why that last shot of season 3 was so
Mm,
satisfying. And you're just like,
mm.
he just like strolls in casually and just like, yeah, he just screwed all of you over. and and then in this season, it's just like he basically he's just a yes man, and he does
Mm-hmm.
whatever anybody tells him to do. And it's funny because it's funny because Kendall annoys me with how he interacts with people and what he says, but Tom's the complete opposite. He's just weird in the different way, but I love everything. And like his interactions with Greg are the
Mm-hmm.
funniest things in this show. But the moment that him and Shiv just go into each other, and that was so raw. And I'm like, this is contempt. Like
From
this.
both directions. Yeah.
Yes. And then they wind up next to each other in the car holding hands at the end. I'm just like, wow. Like this is gonna be the most miserable marriage ever moving forward.
Miserably rich marriage.
Well, that's true. Because uh Robert, what was the moment you realized Tom was gonna win?
uh, when Matson asks him to basically interview, that's probably where I was like, because I knew for a while that Matson wasn't like he was just stringing Shiv along. He needed her, so I
Yeah.
knew Shiv wasn't going to end up on top.
Shiv was too strong of a force for him to deal with because like he didn't really respect her at all.
No,
Like at
and like
all.
he says, he just wants to, you know, have relations with her whenever he
Yeah.
wants.
Which the moment that I realized it was when Shiv started talking about like, oh, Tom will do whatever anybody says, and
Yeah,
there's just a look on his face. He's like, oh.
might as well have been drooling.
And then I'm like, oh no, oh no, that is where this is going, and it ended exactly like that because Tom is the perfect. I'm just gonna put a figurehead on the top of this and do whatever the hell I want, and Tom will do whatever I say.
And he gets a nice fat paycheck and gets to have the ego of like, I'm CEO of this big influential company.
Yep.
And it's
And
funny
like,
that you, oh, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's funny that you bring up the funny lines because one of my favorite of the entire season, I think it's episode 2 actually, the last one where Logan is strong and kicking, where he gives
Mhm.
that big speech and Greg says he's like Jaws if he or Santa if he was a hitman or something like that. And then they have Logan step up on the copy paper to give him like a little podium, and Tom turns over and goes, I could kiss you at this height. And then Logan just gives him this look like, what the hell are you doing, man? Uh, that and the fact that, like you said, they're both right in that argument. Uh, the fact that they're able to thread that needle so perfectly, where so much of the show, I'm like, you're right, Shiv is just awful to Tom, but he lets it happen.
Mhm.
And he's the reason he's attracted to her in the first place is because of the position that it can get him, in life. So she's making so many good points. He's making so many good points. I'm watching that fight on the balcony being just like clapping after like I don't have a rooting interest there, even though Tom's kind of been my favorite. Yeah.
And you're just like, it's all true.
It's like the strangers on the scene in Strangers on a Train when they're playing tennis and you just see the people going like this.
Yes. It's exactly like that. And because it just kept going back and they just kept whack at each
Right.
other. And it's just like, yep, they're both terrible. They've both been terrible to each other.
Hmm.
They're both terrible for each other. And I don't know. I'm not convinced that's Tom's baby.
Oh, you're still not? Who else would it have been? Either
I don't
Nate
even know,
or
honestly.
like
It's one of those kinds of things where narratively it doesn't even have to make sense. In my
sure.
head, like that just can't be Tom's baby. But the thing is, he'll accept that baby because what that baby means for him, and that's Tom.
Yeah,
That's Tom in a
exactly.
nutshell. And honestly, Tom was my favorite character through this whole thing because like he I guess he's the only one that really accomplishes exactly what he sought out to do. Because the thing is,
Hmm.
like, he didn't have high standards.
Right. Exactly.
It's just like I don't care if I have any real power. It's all about position. And he got it. And his little thing with Greg and everybody shipping Tom and Greg this whole entire show, Greg messed up. Greg tried to be too smart and try
Hmm.
to play too many sides. And Tom just like, no, you messed up. And did you? So actually, here's a really interesting thing in that last episode. Did
Hmm.
you think that he had the votes? Did you go into that room really thinking that Kendall had the votes and he was going to get it?
To me, it hinged on Stewie and Ewan because they're talking about how Stewie's hemming and hawing the whole episode. They can't
Yeah,
get a straight answer out of him. So once Stewie said, Team Ken, baby, I was
yeah,
like, they're actually going to do this. Um, but it was the looks that Shiv and Roman were giving Kendall, like when he sat down in Logan's chair for the first time and he's all giddy, pouring everyone water around the table, where Shiv was like, he's too comfortable. I'm not staying in this position. That's when I was like, I don't know.
it was a sore winner. That's Kendall was doomed from the start because just he couldn't just accept it. I just
Right.
feel like he just couldn't accept the position and just be happy with it. He had to be so obnoxious about everything. And then that's what got him in the end. Like his sister couldn't even bear looking at him in that position. And it all came full circle because what's with that room going all the way back to season one when he thought that he had it in the first
Oh
place?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just like this is the most uncomfortable room in television. Like
Hmm.
this is where people's dreams go to die.
Logan
And
might as well have been in there again, saying, yelling at people.
exactly. And where do you see Roman? Do you think Roman's in a better place? at the end of this show.
Yes, but marginally. I think he sits on the table and says we're bullshit, right? He realizes
Yep.
it finally, and I kind of like that. I actually really like that a lot. Um, that someone had the self-awareness. Kendall, I don't think he ever got the self-awareness. Shiv might have, but Roman's got that smile for a minute when he's sipping on the martini, which I saw people talking about is Jerry's drink, so that's a nice little touch.
He
Um,
just wanted Jerry.
that's all he
Honestly,
wanted.
if you take a step back, that's all he wanted. And do you wish Roman got Jerry?
No, because I don't think he really deserves her. Jerry's, she's a yes woman, just like everyone else is. But I think she has a lot more freedom because you mentioned how Logan died and everyone is kind of off kilter now. I feel like Carl, Frank, Jerry, all of those type of people feel very free now. Like Carl and Frank keep talking about their golden parachute or buying islands with their brother-in-law and all that kind of stuff. So I think they can do whatever they want now, and Jerry doesn't have to, indulge Roman's things. So he's happy, I think, to be out of the whole fight and push and pull, but
Mhm.
I don't know where he goes. I don't think he has anywhere to go really.
Well, I think he, life wise, is in the same place he started.
Sure, right.
Like this whole series was him getting pulled into the family business, right? But
Hmm.
I think mentally, which is surprising to say, I think he's in a better place because I feel like he really understands the gravity of what that life really would have meant and how much he didn't want it.
Yeah,
And I also agree Jerry's too good for him. I feel like Jerry's going to be in a really good place working under Tom
sure, yeah,
because Tom's an idiot and doesn't really know what he's doing. And I feel like he's just going to listen to a lot of what Jerry has to say about stuff. And then everybody else is getting like snip, 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 snip. Tom's going to clean house besides Jerry.
yeah. Who? Fisher Stevens, Hugo.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yep.
Tom and Shiv are both like, no, we got Carolina. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if everyone's just like you said, snip, snip, snip.
And I love how the internet's such a wild thing. All the
Yeah.
frog and toad coding of it was a Carl and
Oh, Carl and Frank,
yeah. Just two best friends.
just two
Two
buds.
just two buds. I just it's so interesting because I never expected Alexander Skarsgård's character to be such a big part of this show. And then in the end, like he holds all the cards.
Hmm.
And in the when it really comes down to it, it's like he's the one who has all the power, all of the money, and Tom's just like, well, whatever you say, I'll do. I'll just be happy over here. So actually, one shot that I wanted to talk about is
Hmm.
in the car at the end. Is there a smugness to Tom putting out his hand like that?
I think in his face there is, but also with a visual metaphor, it's interesting that his hand is on the bottom,
Mhm.
and Shiv's is on the top, and that they don't, close their hands. They don't like
It's
it's not a holding hands. It's yeah, more of a
so
yeah,
it was the most uncomfortable, like holding your spouse's hand moment ever in a TV show.
yeah,
And but yeah, I do feel like that. Like I feel like Tom felt some like yes when
right,
he's
for
able to
sure.
just be like puts his hand out, and then Shiv just automatically puts her hand in his hand. It's just like there's the power there because Shiv is basically shifting all of her energy into her child. I feel like.
Yes, probably, but also I don't know if that ambition is totally gone because she still is connected to it. She's still married to the CEO. Um, I
Well,
think the words of her mother are going to ring loud in her ears about how her mother was never a good mother, so she should never have had kids. Shiv might be feeling similarly, I think.
I do think that her motivation at the end was what situation do I have more opportunity for power?
Yeah, yeah,
With my brother in charge, who I think Kendall made it very clear in his actions and how he acted, like he was going to be a little baby and just be like, "Eat mine," and
exactly.
then or my husband, who basically is a worm and will do whatever a powerful person tells him to do, and she gets to be in bed with him every night, talking in his ear.
Hmm.
I think she made that decision very clearly because she knew there's a lot of people that, and that's the interesting thing. If you're the kind of person that Tom is, where you have like you aren't really taking real authority and you're just taking in other people's perspectives, that's a very high point to be with a lot of contact with a lot of people, and a lot of people want to be in your ear.
Yeah.
And Shiv has front row seat. So she's right there, right next to his ear. It'll be interesting. How long does Greg last?
Oh, I think he'll last just as long as Tom lasts, at least.
Yeah,
Uh, because Tom makes it very clear that he's his protector. Everyone else thinks you're garbage. No one trusts you, all that kind of stuff. Though I will say, I don't think there was almost any fan service, like clear fan service, the way a lot of shows do in the final season or final episode. But Tom sticking with Greg and especially putting the sticker on his forehead felt like the most fan service. Like we'll give you guys this one. It doesn't really
yeah.
affect the ultimate message of the show.
They'll always be together,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Sporus and Nero.
Yeah. It just that was a bold move for Greg
Hmm.
to call Kendall, and that like he came very close to making an extremely smart decision, and that turned around to be a very dumb decision because then he bit the hand that feeds him, Tom,
Exactly.
and now he's going to be like he's going to have a place. It's not going to be a great place there, but I guess are there what other things really stood out to you that you wanted to talk about this final season?
It's funny that Greg has a salary of only 40K. It's like, that's not bad for most people. Uh, I love the score. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
mention the score. Um, I've always loved the score.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nicholas Britell is a genius and one of the best composers out there these days. Um, I missed some of the tracks that would play in earlier seasons during just like people walking around doing business stuff, just because I think they're fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he elevated the score to a whole new place that it was never at before. Like it has that villain track, almost that menacing Jaws sounding track that
Mm-hmm.
plays in episode 2 when Logan is giving that rah rah speech, and then in the last episode when Shiv or when Tom tells Shiv that it's going to be him, there's those like deep strings and all that kind of stuff. Um, and then just the final track that plays over everything as it shows each character for the last time. Um, it's maybe the best piece of music on the show, and then how they cut it off right for the last second and a half just to hear the water and see Kendall staring out at it.
Thinking
Yeah, the
about
sound
let the waves take me.
exactly. And then the actor actually did it, or actually tried. Um, the sound design and especially the score is just one of the biggest highlights for me.
It's interesting because he had Andor as well recently that he did this score for. Because I'm looking at some of the other series he worked on. He did the film Cruella. He did the Underground Railroad show, Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty.
Hmm.
Overall,
Which I
though,
don't
it does look
appreciate.
like it's a lot of shows like this or movies like this, and it kind of gives that vibe, and it really works. And also, that theme, it's going to be really weird not hearing that anymore.
Mhm.
Like sometimes there's just certain themes from TV shows that will just be like they're gonna live on forever in you. And sometimes, like Game of Thrones are just gonna keep using that same theme for every show that they make. Because why not?
Apparently, why
Um,
not? I don't love it, but hey.
it's very interesting, and just how the show was shot. Mark Mylod, who directed 16 episodes of the show, so
Hmm.
like he was primarily the director here. He worked on Game of Thrones. He's worked on Shameless. He directed the Menu. Definitely brought a lot of those kinds of vibes. He sure
Yeah.
knows how to make things with a bunch of people that are just straight trash human beings
Yeah.
and make
I
it
think
work.
he may have a problem with capitalism. I'm not sure.
I don't know. And just still so weird to think this is from Adam McKay and Will Ferrell, executive producers.
Yeah, I'm
Not the
always
Adam McKay
curious.
part, the Will Ferrell part at this point just seems weird.
I've always been curious just how much of an impact or input they've had on the show, or if they just kind of gave it some funding towards the beginning and got the executive producer tag the rest of the way.
I feel like Adam McKay probably would have some, but from what I understand, like Jesse Armstrong definitely seems like
The
was
guy.
this show. Like
Yeah.
this is his show. And it just makes me so happy because he's done so many things with Armando Iannucci. And I love In the Loop, The Thick of It, all that kind of stuff that Armando Iannucci's done. I'm so mad HBO canceled Avenue 5.
I haven't seen it.
Well, now you can watch both seasons and not have to worry about it because they canceled it. But like, there's just some level of being able to make a show about despicable people work.
Hmm.
And this show was that. Just like
I,
there's like almost no people in this show that are just like good human beings to latch on to.
right. And that's what I love about it, because even though we know that about them, and even though we empathize deeply, like in the Connor's wedding episode or in the funeral episode, that's why we can't have people like this have this much power. And I love that as a theme where like that's it's okay to empathize with them because they're people and they go through the same stuff. But do not put all of this in Kendall's hands. Do not put even Matson, don't put it in his hands. It's still not going to
Like a
end well
scumbag.
for everyone else, for the 99%.
Well, it's interesting because I've always been staunchly against death taxes and inheritance taxes.
Mm,
Because in general, I'm like, government shouldn't be stealing my money. And then it's like, you're going to take it when I'm dead? That should
yeah.
go to my family. This show is like the perfect example of like maybe that shouldn't be a thing. Because like
Maybe at a certain threshold, yeah.
on like a you have it's like I feel like you should have like a test on how well of a parent you were to those children before you pass on like a fortune to them. Because if you look at the Roy family, none of them were prepared to take it.
No, no.
I also one little moment in the final episode when Connor's like, yeah, I took there's one other walkthrough before you all showed up. It was me.
Myself, yeah.
Yeah, just Connor taking his own. He
Finally,
fought for
good
his
for him.
1%. He's moving on with his life. And is his marriage great? Is it gonna work?
Well, did you catch that they said Mencken in the courts that he might not actually become president, and Willa didn't seem too happy about that. She was like, "Oh wait, I might actually have to live with Connor." She was happy to ship him off to Croatia or wherever.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't think Connor picked up on that at all. But
No,
we did. We
yeah,
saw
I
it.
still support him. Like 100%.
Just he it feels so funny because he's the fourth child. He's the eldest child. He's the
He's the
oldest
eldest
boy.
son. Yeah,
And which I love that they called him out on that when he screamed that. It's like, no, you're not. You're not even. But like Connor's just been on his whole own island this whole entire time, which is why it makes so much sense that they're just cannot handle their father's death. And Connor's just over here like, yeah, I'm getting married.
Hmm.
Bye. It's just like, that's it. And he has nothing to do with the company. He's off doing his own thing. And it's just like, is Connor a great person? Is he a smart person? Probably not. But you know what? He's living his best life. And who's to say the three of the other ones are?
He might be the most mature though, right? Because of the karaoke scene where he's talking about how you're all needy love sponges, and he just like, I don't need it. It's a dark, very deeply sad realization, but it's a realization and it's a mature, self-aware one, unlike the
God, they
others.
are a bunch of love sponges.
Hmm.
They need daddy's approval.
Hmm.
Daddy's a bastard. That second episode though, when Logan was doing his whole entire victory speech thing, and it's just like, nope. My favorite character in this show has always been Logan,
Hmm.
because Logan knows what he's about,
Right.
and he has never compromised on that once. And he will line up exactly who he needs to line up to be where he needs them to be. Why I love Tom. Tom will
Hmm.
do whatever the hell he wants. And Tom got that experience real good working right next to Logan, because he's going to be taking Matt's shit the whole rest of forever that they're running the show. But Logan was always my favorite character. I love Brian Cox too. He's such an
Of
amazing
course.
actor, but like,
Yeah.
he's the only real one here. Everybody's a bunch of bullshit, except Roman realized it at the end. So Roman's no longer bullshit, just
Hmm.
everybody else.
I like that you say that because I've never thought Logan was my favorite character, but I've always respected him for that exact reason. Like he's fully evil and everything that he does, Ewan says in one episode that he's probably more responsible for the destruction of the earth than anyone in the world, which was probably true. But he's he worked his way there, and his kids just want their inheritance because they want it, not because they put in the work. So like I've always had that respect because he was able to do it within the system, doing it the right way within that system. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like you said, he doesn't care who's in his way. He just gets there, gets things done.
it's exactly why I love Tywin Lannister as a character in Game
Mm.
of Thrones. He is Tywin Lannister.
Hmm.
There's a reason that the
They both
Lannisters in the
died on the
place that they
toilet.
are.
I just realized.
Well, that's the thing. There's a reason that they're both in the place that they are,
Hmm.
and why they're so powerful. Logan Roy wasn't president. Did he
Right.
have
They
more
don't need to
power
be
than the
president or
president?
king.
Probably. That's the thing. If you have that power, you have that control, you could influence things. And Brian Cox and Charles Dance are just amazing actors who just really brought that to life. And do you know what? His kids probably killed him too. Not
Hmm.
literally, but they definitely killed him.
Yeah.
Just all the nonsense that has happened over these 4 seasons got to him in the end. But Robert, what do you have any other thoughts?
I'll just throw in a joke at the end because I
Okay.
I saw a tweet and I apologize that I can't credit it because I don't remember who it was from. It was a review of the new Transformers movie that called it a Callispatron hibernation ass movie, and I thought that was uh, a great little reference to the sleeping robot that stays in a cave for an hour of the 3 hour movie or whatever.
uh this it was such a big week, because like, out of those 4 shows that ended within a week, how many of them did you watch, Robert?
Just Succession and Barry. I gave up
Okay.
on Ted Lasso and had never seen Maisel.
Okay. Like, I think Marvelous Mrs. Maisel had like the most perfect ending to that show. And that was
Mhm.
probably my favorite out of the 4. But this Succession finale, it was very interesting having a 90-minute front row seat to absolute train wreck of
Mhm.
all these people's lives and just watching them all just kind of like clump together in a giant heap of just sadness and disappointment. And
Yeah.
it's exactly how it should have ended. So there you go.
Right. Like I didn't know how it was going to end, but I was fully satisfied, and that's really all that I'm looking for.
You
It's
gotta have
great. It's going to be a happy or like a satisfying rewatch. It'll be great.
you have to end it how it was and how it lived. And it was a
Hmm.
train wreck of horrible people, and that's exactly how it ended. And good for Succession for doing that. But
Hmm.
Robert, thank you for coming on to chat some spoiler talk on season 4, the final season of Succession.
Thank you again for having me. I always love it.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.